Hello and welcome to the channel. For those of you who don't know, this is Chiffon. I make cooking videos, or at least I used to. I've been gone for a while, but I wanted to start making videos, and I'm hoping to branch out into other content other than cooking, such as my interests. So, we're doing a fictional tropes tier list maker. Um, you know, there's a lot of people in this world who like stories, who like books, who like literature. I'm a literature veteran myself. I used to write a lot, and I'm hoping I can get back into the swing of writing this year. So what better to do than to rank a couple fictional tropes? Uh, so let's get started. First off, we have abusive parents. I think as a concept, I don't really like calling this a trope. I think that I think that it gets a bit dicey. Especially it's like there's a lot of people who write tropes or make tropes and sort of, how do I describe it? Sort of poorly write them. They make them inaccurate or they make them disrespectful, and it's just a whole hassle. I messed up my tiers, sorry. But I think for that reason, we need to make a tier for depends on execution. Really depends on execution. Because for a trope like abusive parents, or for a thing like abusive parents, if it's written wrong, it can be really disrespectful to real life abuse victims and all that. Yeah, relationship. I think Human X Robot is a pretty solid one. I think if you've ever seen the movie Ex Machina, or if you've played like any game with a robot that's romanceable, I think in a way it's pretty interesting. It's a concept that I enjoy seeing, a character who's human and has lived as a human paired with a character who's trying really hard to be human but isn't exactly. And in certain situations it can be really beautiful in the way it's executed. So I think A. That being said, I don't like AI in real life, obviously, but I think that's a pretty good placement. Ally turned antagonist. I would say also A. Not much to say about that, but it gets really good. I like the angst factor that comes with it. I like the the drama, that like betrayal. When it's done well, it's done really well. Amnesia has to be a C for me. I think that as like, I would say it depends on execution, but I guess the fact of the matter is that I just don't like it that much personally. I think it's sort of a way for writers to sort of muddy up like relationships and characters, and like in certain situations it just like docks all character growth. I have enjoyed Amnesia stories, but you know, sometimes it just gets to a point. Ally turned antagonist, I think, or antagonist turned ally. I think in the same vein. I like a good redemption story. Actually, I might put it like one spot higher. I like a good redemption story. I like a good like join the team. Avatar: The Last Airbender is like one of the perfect examples of this, but obviously everyone has their own. If you have your own, let me know in the comments. Apocalypse. This is one my sister is a big fan of. I think they're personally okay. I love a good zombie story. I love zombie stories, but at least to me, I think it's not my favorite. As much as I love like a sad or an angsty story, I also kind of don't have it in me for melodrama and like just tragedy. But when I like it or I'm in the mood, it's pretty good. Arranged marriage. I don't think I want to rank this one. I'll put that at the bottom. Once I won't rank, I'll put at the bottom. Avenging dead friends or family. I think that's a solid A tier alongside these, because I like a good revenge story. Twists on revenge stories though. If you've watched it, Vinland Saga, stories like that where characters go to get revenge but realize that it might not be worth it, or they get revenge and then afterwards they like explore how that feels. I think like avenging a revenge story plus that makes it perfect in S tier, but I think with just avenging, I think it's a solid A. Bad boy, good girl, not a fan. Um, I will say I don't mind the inverse, but I feel like this one's a bit too much. I'll actually bump it up to C. When I like it, but you know, it gets to a point. Beautiful MC doesn't realize she's pretty. I'm putting that in F. This goes for both genders, by the way. I'm reading what's on here, but it really can go either or. I think it's a bit insensitive to people with actual like bodily like people who have issues viewing themselves as like beautiful, for like the most gorgeous person you've ever seen to be like, oh, I'm so ugly, oh, I'm so chopped. It's a bit much, so I think that's gonna go in F. Not a fan. BFF sibling romance. I'm gonna put that solid B. I think it's like I used to like it a bit more. I like the like girl next door kind of vibe. You're best friends with like someone and they have a sibling that's like the friend next door that you really like. It's like a bit forbidden, a bit like, you know, wholesome childhood friends kind of stuff. I think that stuff's really cute. Betrayal, I think A. It kind of has to. It goes with like ally turned antagonist or avenging dead friends or family. I think Betrayal is like a pretty solid story trope. It doesn't really have any other place to be than A. It's really good. Body swap. I actually have not dabbled body into body swap that much, but I do want to say C tier. It seems like the kind of thing where if I got a bit more into it, I would probably like it. I think that's good. Caddy slash crazy ex depends on execution, because I mean you hear it in real life all the time. People are like, "Oh, my ex was crazy," and it turns out that their ex was like perfectly reasonable, and they were like just a terrible person. So I think that it goes on depends on execution, um, because when it's written well, it can be written well. Child of MC sequel. I've never really read a story where it's the child of a main character going on just like continue the story, but most times I see it, it doesn't really end well. I'm gonna go depends on execution. Chosen One. I'm a big fan of a good Chosen One story. I think it's not as much. I'm not as big of a fan as I used to. I think it's B though. Legend of Zelda, Link with the Master Sword and stuff like that, and his different incarnations, like being the ones to carry the flame of being the hero, and all that kind of stuff. I just think it's pretty neat. Coming of age. Actually, I think this is gonna be our first S tier. I don't know. I'm 17, obviously, but I think that maybe it's because of that. The idea of like developing your worldview and just getting out there and learning about all there is to offer that this world has. I think there's something beautiful about it, and I think that it belongs in S for that. Controlling dystopian government. This is another one my sister's a really big fan of. I'm gonna put this in. Actually, I'm gonna put this in A. If you've done any required reading at school, you have read a dystopian, and most of them are pretty good. I like a good dystopian, more than I like apocalypse. Damsel in distress. I kind of think we've moved past this a little bit in society. Um, I don't think it's actually the only way I could see this being bumped up is if you did it equally with men being the one in distress as well. Because if it's like if you're doing a story and it's just women being put in danger over and over again, I think that's very telling of the kind of person you are as an author and as a person. So I think I'm gonna keep that in F. Dark haired, hot male villain. Yeah, just tell me you wanna be like Ryan with the CEOs. I'm actually gonna bump it up. I think it works sometimes. As campy and as corny as it can be, sometimes that like, oh, I'm a dark, brooding guy, but I have a terrible past. I think it works. I think it's really funny. I'm gonna put that with here. I don't know what Dark, mysterious, broodingly. I'm gonna assume that's what it says. Dead slash missing girl. A story centered around a group of people trying to figure out the death or the disappearance of a certain person is really good to me. I think it's a good basis for horror movies. I think it's a good basis for adventure. I think it's a good basis for a lot of things. And I think that like one character haunting the narrative, whether they actually be dead or alive, is really good. I'd say dead parents would meet up to that, but I think the relationship you have with your parents is different compared to that. That being said, it's not bad. I'm gonna go B. Dragons can also go to B. Um, this is a bit different from everything here, and I don't really know why it's here. But I think that dragons as a concept are really cool. I mean, I don't know. I think everyone thinks that, but yeah. Enemies to lovers. Our third S tier. They spelled enemies, I just realized. But enemies to lovers is really good. I think that like it ties in with that coming of age anti-target ally. It's like someone you once thought of as awful, just like terrible in a person you didn't like. You not only grow to have a respect for, but you grow to have something deeper. I mean, hate is the antithesis to love, and I think it's like that pipeline. It's like both sides of the spectrum intersecting at a certain point is really beautiful. Ex BFF to popular mean girl, it's been overdone. I don't know. It's not for me, but to each their own. Fairy tale retellings are a solid B. I don't read them much, but the ones I have seen, I'm a fan of. I think like fairy tales have a lot of substance to work with, and just taking that and like spinning it into a whole new story, pretty cool. Fake relationships, A. I think I think it kind of ties in with the enemies to lovers in the sense that you would form a fake relationship with like a person you hate in a story because oh I need to tell my parents that I'm not like lonely and I'm never gonna have kids or anything like that, and then it turns into oh I actually really like this person. I like it a lot. I think it has a lot of substance there. And it has good like angst potential, or it has good like breakup potential and ally turn antag. Femme fatale characters. I'm a pretty big sucker. I think I think what's a lot of them are really cool. A lot of stories that I like have femme fatale characters, but they don't really feel like caricatures or they don't feel shoved into for the author to be like, wait guys, look, I like women. It feels like they're actual characters just with that trait. And I think that's really good and a really good way of like writing characters to me. Forbidden Love, I'm gonna put it in B tier. I know that I said fake relationships um sort of ties in with it, or enemies to lovers or BFF sibling romance. Um, but I don't know. It's a bit like overplayed, but at the same time, it's like it's a classic. You can't really hate it. Found Family, solid A. There's a lot of like instances in which like you'll make a friend and at some point they'll become just as close if not closer than family. So I think found families are very realistic like writing trope, it because it happens in the real world just as much as it happens in fiction. It's pretty cool. I don't know. Friends to lovers, also S tier. Bonus points if it's childhood friends in fiction. I don't really know how I feel about that kind of stuff in real life, but in fiction, I think it's pretty cool. I think it's realistic too. The pipeline of obviously being friends to like lovers, because as good as enemies to lovers is, this could never happen in real life, like ever. Um, so yeah, gay BFF. Um, Depends on execution. I think that what's it called? It's like if they're an actual character, and by execution I mean if they're like well written and actually have a personality. Because there's a very big trope of like straight authors like adding gay characters into their works and making them like caricatures and being disrespectful towards like queer people and stuff like that, and I think it's a problem. Heist is not something that I have tapped into that much, but I'm gonna put it in C because I think if I actually I'll put it in B. My sister actually has a story about heists or people who stop heists, spies. I'm sorry, but I think spies and heists sort of tie into the same motif of like people disguise doing like odd jobs and stuff like that. And I think that if it's something I read more, it's something that I could tap into. High school cliques is gonna go and see because like if you know anything about cliques, they either tie in with found family or they go to popular mean girl, and that's not something I'm like. That's something you kind of have to tiptoe around. I think they can work, but you know, it's I think they can work on either side actually, especially as like depends on the character you're writing or the hurt comfort is actually one of my favorite tropes of all time. I think the experience of being hurt and a loved one there being there to comfort you and help you through the time, whether that be physically hurt or, mentally hurt, I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think it ties in with, friends to lovers and coming of age and found family. So I think it's pretty cool. I like it. Next is it's the love I what does this mean? I guess it means like dating over the internet. That's not my cup of tea. I don't like that. Or does it mean instant love? No, that's because that's love at first sight. Okay, no. LGBTQ plus struggle. So, I guess my thing is when you read a story, like what's it called? When read a story about a marginalized group, a lot of them deal with the struggles of that group. And as a person who's black myself, I think that the problem with depicting struggle all the time is that it sort of paints the idea that there's no happy ending for any marginalized group. Um, and that like it's just gonna be constant struggle and suffering and stuff like that. And I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem that comes in writing. That being said, I also think painting struggle is necessary, but I think filmmakers, directors, I think authors need to understand that there's a fine line where you can show struggle and show joy at the same time. It can't just all be tilted towards struggle or all be tilted towards joy. Because if it's all tilted towards joy, you get gay best friend who's a caricature. You get a poorly written gay best friend. But if you do bad all the time, then you get LGBTQ struggle, but it's only struggle. I'm gonna put it in D because there's a chance to recover, but you know, it doesn't depend on execution. It just depends on is this what I'm seeing all the time. Long Lost Royal. Not much to say about it. Not my cup of tea. But I think it's a cool trope, and I think that people can like it. Love at First Sight. I'm gonna go A tier. I think that it's just cute. That's all I really have to say about it. It's just cute. I think it works when it works. It also ties in with friends to lovers and coming of age. Because who says love at first sight always has to work out? Sometimes it doesn't work out, like a coming of age story. And I think that's like the beautiful thing about it. It's like, has a chance to work, it has the chance not to work. Love triangles. I'm gonna put it in C, but there's a very serious discussion to be had about the fact that love triangles in media aren't actually love triangles and more so like a love V. Um, because it's only two people liking one person instead of the entire triangle liking the next person in the cycle, or even the entire triangle liking each other. Um, it's just like there's a bit of a problem with that, and I think that it could work if more authors decided to be brave and make it so all the characters liked each other in the circle or the triangle. But yeah, mafia slash gang leader. This is so Wattpad, and I'm not a Wattpadder. I'm not a fan, but it's not awful. I'm gonna put it in D. Magical academies. Was never the biggest Harry Potter fan, but I think there's something to be said about how cool magical academies are. Um, one of my favorite shows or one of my favorite animes. Well, it's not one to one. is about an academy in space where people like have mechs and they pilot mechs and stuff like that. Um, it's Gundam Witch from Mercury. I don't know why I was trying to gatekeep, but yeah, magical academies as a whole are pretty cool. I remember when I was younger, I tried to write a lot of stories centered around that, and I think they're pretty neat. Makeover, I think it's a solid. Actually, I'll do solid B. I think it's a cute way to make a short story about two characters who are friends or lovers, you know, having a moment together. There was this cute Persona fic I read about that actually, um, and I think it just works. It also works for queer characters experiencing their like, experimenting with their like identity and stuff like that. It's solid. Nothing to be mad at with that. Mary Sue, Gary Stu. Characters need flaws. Characters need actual character instead of being perfect all the time. I think that's pretty standard. Meet cute. I think A. I think no, who can hate like a story about two characters like meeting each other, having a fun time, loving each other. You know, that's hard to hate. Mentor dies during a grand journey. I'm gonna put that in B. It's pretty bog standard. They train this guy and then he dies. Happens in anime a lot. Happens in books a lot. Can't hate it. Nothing to hate there. It could also be pretty tragic, especially with the found family aspect. You found a mentor who may be like your father or your mother, and they die right in front of you. That would crush anyone. Mirror description. I'm gonna assume they mean like a description of a character in a mirror, and I'm gonna put that in A tier, especially like when your character's at the lowest point in their story. A mirror description about the state of them, going deeper into like going deeper past like their physical attributes to show how it reflects on their mental state is perfect to me. I love mirror descriptions. I think they work really well. Miscommunication. Once upon a time, I would have said F. Now I'm gonna say depends on execution. Because sometimes miscommunication just does not need to happen in the story, and other times it does. It really depends on the kind of story you're trying to tell, the kind of story, which characters are in it, and how the characters behave. Because there are certain stories where miscommunication happens, where those characters would figure it out in like 10 minutes and a sit down conversation. And other stories, it gets pretty like heated. So it depends on execution. Misfit / outsider protagonist. Actually, I'm just gonna put that in A. Can't go wrong with that whatsoever. It's just like, it's a lot of stories nowadays, but like it's never usually bad. I like it. So I think A. Mommy and daddy issues depends on execution, just like abusive parents. I don't really think I need to explain why. It ties in the same. Mutual pining. Why am I saying that's S tier? Oh my god. Oh, why'd I even hesitate? That's awesome. It's like, ties into the friends to lovers thing. It's like, two characters, they both really like each other, but things just keep getting in their way despite how much they want it, or they're both scared. It feels real. It feels awesome, and I like it. Mysterious new guy, A tier. I think a character with secrets, even though it happens a lot, is a pretty cool character. I think it's classy. I think it's neat. I think it's what's it called? I think it's something that is hard to mess up. And that's not like to put pressure on any writers who are writing characters like that, but you can make them have a secret like they have a power, or you can make them have a secret like I killed someone, or you can make them have a secret where if they revealed it, they'd be shunned. It works with the misfit protagonist. It works with a lot of things. Naive new girl feels weird. Even on both sides, it's sort of like, especially if you're in a certain setting, it's hard to justify a character being naive, but I think in certain settings it also works. I think that belongs. It depends on execution. Because if you have a character in like college or high school, it's like you probably should have a bit more awareness about things. But even in high school, it's like it could still work. People lying, but they're a very trustful person. It's like, depends on execution. Next door neighbor, A tier. Um, I mentioned like liking the friend next door kind of stories, and I think next door neighbor ties in very well with that. No, it's just cute. Everyone has a neighbor, and I think that's probably the best part about it. Normal F slash normal female slash paranormal creature. Oh, this is like relationship stuff. I didn't think that was on here. Um, as long as the creature passes, like, I don't remember what the name of the test is, but as long as the creature's like, able to speak and have a conversation and is actually like as intelligent as a person, I don't really see the problem with it. This is for both genders, not just female, even though it says that on here. I think it works. I think a solid A tier, because it happens often, but the ones that are good and not weird is the one I like a lot. Old warrior, reluctantly helping protagonist, S tier. It ties in with the mentor. It's like Ellie and Joel in The Last of Us. I don't know. I couldn't think of any other examples. I'm on the spot right now, but you always know like a older warrior helping out a younger character, and it's always beautiful. It's like the dad says, "I don't want a cat," and then they get a cat, and it's opposites attract. A tier. It happens in real life. Probably are gonna attract more to people who have different interests than you, because if you're just the same, it gets a bit like But people who are different like to gravitate towards each other, and I think that's not only realistic, but it's cute. Sharing interests, especially fashion sense. It works very well with fashion sense and drawn characters and stuff like that. Past trauma depends on execution. Ties absolutely into abusive parents, though it is a good trope. It is a good trope. Well, I shouldn't call things like these tropes. So I'm sorry if that like is disrespectful. I don't mean to be, but I think that in the case of past trauma, giving a character past trauma characterizes them, develops them a bit more, gives them something to push past. It's not really a character flaw because it's not their fault. As at least in terms of abusive parents, sometimes characters do things and that causes the trauma, which is their fault. But I think when I say do things, I mean like bad things to people, not like something happens to them. It's like, oh, it's your fault. But yeah, personal diary in the wrong hands. By wrong hands, I'm gonna assume like an antagonist, so I'm gonna put that in B. It's not my favorite, but I've seen a lot of stories where it creates good tension, creates like something to be like, oh no, at, and I think that's pretty neat. Poor girl ex rich guy, poor guy ex rich girl. I want to say D. I feel like it's kind of odd to me, and can get a bit like weird if it's like written badly. Pretty mean cheerleader. I don't mind a good bully character, especially if they're well written. I'm gonna put that in C. It's not like my favorite trope or anything, but I think it's pretty good, especially if it's written well. Prophecy. I like prophecy stories, but I like stories where they abandon the prophecy and rise up over fate even more. There's something really beautiful about that to me. But also like characters fulfilling a good prophecy. Nothing to hate there. Not like other girls, not like other guys protagonists. Depends on execution. Sometimes there's like the pick me characters, and then sometimes there's like a character who's actually not like other people for a certain reason. Reluctant hero. Is perfect. I love a character who just does not want to do their job, whether that be like a big or small thing. But even, when they don't want to do it, it's like there's Evangelion, Shinji not wanting to, do it. There's Gundam, where every protagonist does not want to pilot it. Happens a lot in mecha stories, now that I realized it. But yeah, there's not much to hate about that, especially when they rise up over it, or they realize that they don't have to be the hero, and that like everyone can work towards something to help them out and stuff like that. I just think it's beautiful. Rivals to lovers, I think even better than enemies to lovers actually, because it's a more realistic pipeline. You don't hate your rival. You're not enemies with your rival. You're not gonna tell your rival you're gonna kill them, but you're gonna have a bit of animosity with your rival. And I think that like it's right on the bridge where it's like this is conceivable in real life. Not that these are based in reality at all, but I don't know, something about it. Academic rivals gives it extra bonus points. I'm gonna put sassy ethnic friend an F, mainly because I don't know who made this tier list, but I hope they realize that when they use the word sassy, there's a certain connotation that brings to the mind of a person who's a bigot, which is like pretty bad. I think saying, uh, actually, while I'm here, I can see it, right here, token minority. When you say token, it also brings a certain idea to mind. Because it's like, I've heard it from like racist people before. When you say sassy, I know what you're talking about, and I don't like it. Same with token. So, if you're gonna include a character who's a minority or ethnic, make them an actual character and not just a caricature of those, like, of the people, of the groups they're from, because it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to the people who are consuming the story and, you know, treating them as if they can't handle a character from a different background, and it's disrespectful to the people of the group. That's really all I have to say about that. Second chance robots. What's not to love about it? Actually, I was gonna put it in B, but I'm gonna put it in A. What's not to love about it? You know, someone who's been heartbroken and they get another chance with the same person or a different person. It's something really nice, and I think that it works. Self-loathing protagonist depends on execution. If your main character, every 5 seconds of the story is going, "Oh, I'm so ugly, I'm so chopped, I hate everything," then you're probably not gonna want to interact with them anymore, and you have to. But if your character's like self-loathing in the sense that they're like, you know, they do things for other people, but for some reason there's something that they just can't get out of their heart, that they just don't like themselves, I think that's realistic, and I think that's a thing that can be written well if given to the right author. Slow burn, S tier. There's a lot of slow burn out there, and most of it isn't that bad. The only problem I see with slow burn is if you slow burn up to a story that gives a lackluster ending, which happens a lot with TV shows. But I think in fiction, it works pretty well, especially since it's like you can't stall with fiction. Yeah, you can't stall with writing. I mean, you kind of have to just write it and see what happens. Soulmates is also S. I was actually thinking of a rant I was gonna give about this before we record the video, but I think the higher the stakes with the soulmate thing is, the better it is. You know, there's like the red ribbon that ties your pinkies to the other, and it's like you walk over and you meet them. That's pretty cool. There's like the oh, it's like the writing on your skin, that's a message from them. I think that's pretty cool. And then there's the ones where the threat is like death if you don't ever confess your feelings to that person. And I think that's great because I think it can be that serious sometimes. But also, I think if you like someone, then you should confess to them. That's like my personal philosophy. And what better motivator to confess to someone than the threat of dying? Not actually. There's no one's gonna kill you if you don't confess to your partner or your crush. Spunky, comic relief, best friend. Depends on execution. I think what's it called? Depends on execution. Not much to say there. I think it kind of ties in with the it doesn't really tie in with any of these. I think it kind of ties in with those like you know, a less like bigoted version of these two. You know, comic relief friend, especially if they're given a character, it could be really well written and could be really well done. But if it's kind of just like they're there to crack jokes and like destroy 10 seeds that I don't like it. I don't know if I want to rank either of these two. This is just what's that movie? 100 Days. I mean, I've seen stalkers in fictions. I think it depends on execution. If you're romanticizing stalking, there's a serious conversation that needs to be had. But I think because like people go through that in real life and it's scary. But I think if you're like writing a horror story and there's a stalker, I think the depiction of that can be really frightening. And yeah, I think a lot of things are on the table for horror, including stalking, but it depends on if you're romanticizing it or if you're treating it with the severity that it actually is. Strong female protagonist, I think it ties in with the femme fatale, except it's a bit better because that's an actual character. Well, oh wait, that sounds really bad, but better character. You know, as long as it's not like a caricature, I think it's pretty cool. So I'll just summer fling. Especially bonus points if it's rekindled afterwards. Summer fling into winter rekindling. Ooh, perfect. I like that. There's only one bed. I was also thinking about this one earlier. I think there's only one bed is like I mean it's a fact, it's a product of human error, which is very real in the real world. But also it's just like, you know, classic silly story. Oh no, there's only one bed. Oh, I'll sleep on the floor. It's like, no, you can't sleep on the floor. It's like they all play out the same, but I'm a sucker for the classics. Undiscovered fantasy world. Eh, not my favorite, but when I like it, I like it. Actually, I'm gonna bump that down to the unknown superpower. I don't really know what they mean by this, but I think if it's what I'm thinking, where it's like a character gets a superpower that even they don't understand, or a character gets a power that they don't understand, it can be pretty cool. I'm gonna toss that up to B. I like a good horror, like I like a good cosmic horror, and I think that unknown superpowers could tie in very well with that. So, yeah, that's basically all that's on this tier list. Feel free to agree or disagree with me in the comments, but I think that's about it. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys when I see you.